Hi everybody, it's Honest John again. Now, when Lieutenant Joe Gliniewicz committed suicide and staged it to look like a murder, the immediate response was that he was an example of police being targeted because of the inflammatory rhetoric aimed at police by the media and groups like Black Lives Matter. This has become a common theme among police these days. It ignores the fact that nobody in the Black Lives Matter movement or any other movement has advocated for violence against the police. They are advocating that the police stop engaging in violence against unarmed and innocent civilians. Well, it turns out that Officer Gliniewicz was a criminal. Not only did he stage his own death, but he had been stealing from the police cadet program for at least 7 years. He had cocaine in his desk drawer, which he intended to plant in order to frame a city official, and had contacted local gang members in order to murder that same city official. Officer Gliniewicz was not an example of a good cop being murdered. It was an example of a bad cop preying on the community. One can only hope that his entire career will be reviewed to see if he planted evidence on other people that he had actually arrested. There may be people in jail right now who are totally innocent, but are there because Officer Gliniewicz planted evidence on them. And he didn't just all of a sudden become a criminal. He was a criminal on the first day that he put on his badge. Which leads us to Derek Stafford and Morris Greenhouse. These two cops murdered 6-year-old Jeremy Martis and attempted to murder his father, Chris Few. Body camera footage is reported to show that Few had his hands up when these two cops started shooting him. Derek Stafford has 2 indictments for rape and a long history of complaints of excessive force, including breaking the arm of a 14-year-old girl. And Morris Greenhouse was his partner and engaged in the same violence. And yet these two were still on duty. In initial reports, the police claimed that Chris Few had a warrant out for his arrest, that he tried to run over the police officers with his car, that he was armed and shot at the officers, and that he was the one who killed his son. And none of this, not one word of it, was true. But these are the reports that came out as the police tried to cover up for Stafford and Greenhouse. Now, we constantly hear that most police are good cops and there are a few bad apples, and I'm afraid that is just a myth. Because if you look at what's going on, criminals are able to thrive in police departments all across the country. And that would not be the case if there were only a few bad apples, and that all the rest were good cops. The good cops would root these criminals out. Let's face it, it was the so-called good cops who immediately engaged in the cover-up after Stafford and Greenhouse murdered 6-year-old Jeremy Martis and tried to murder his father. And this is something that is repeated in police precincts across the country. Thanks for listening.